Number 7 on my 2012 preseason NFL rankings, I have the New Orleans Saints. They really didn't have too much going on this offseason, did they? Didn't seem like there was much in the news about them, having any sort of transactions or anything newsworthy going on in their franchise. Except for, I don't know, that whole Bounty Gate thing. I don't need to go on any further about what happened to the Saints after their exit from the playoffs at the hands of the 49ers. It has been discussed and spoke of ad nauseum for Saints fans, but those who aren't Saints fans can't get enough. Reader's Digest, long story short, blah, 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 blah. Basically, bounties were the main part of the Saints defense. Their objective was to basically lay hurt on opposing teams' players for profit. That's right, they intentionally were going after knocking players out of the game, not because, hey, I laid a clean hit on them. They were heat-sinking missiles who were dead set on making an extra, I don't know, $1,000, $1,500 for knocking a player out of the game, carting him out of the game, etc. And let's just say that the Saints had their work cut out for them. They lost their heart and soul on defense, Jonathan Vilma, for the entire season. And he's waging war on Roger Goodell right now, still about that. And then there's head coach Sean Payton, who was going to be taking an unpaid year off for knowing about the Bounty Gate scandal and not coming clean about it. So he's going to be on timeout for the entire season. He has no communication whatsoever to that team. So this is going to be all contingent upon their interim coaches and, before I go any further, their former defensive coordinator is pretty much banished from the NFL for an indefinite amount of time. Funny thing is, the Rams hired him on as defensive coordinator after the Saints let him go to bring in Spagnuolo. Yes, Spags, who was the former head coach of the St. Louis Rams, who hired on Greg Williams, who is now gone from the NFL for who knows how long. But basically, the audio tapes came out about his speeches, about how he wanted his defensive players to pretty much, like, for lack of a better term, decapitate the competition. And if you watch the Niners-Saints game, you know who got knocked out and who pretty much made their statement. But I digress. This is not a bash the Saints video. I'm actually going to discuss the Saints. For one, their offense, #1 ranked offense in the NFL. They averaged over 460 yards a game. And this was all thanks in part to their record-setting quarterback, Drew Brees. Drew Brees set the NFL record for most passing yards in a single season. Got to remember, he almost did it in 2008, and he fell like, 15 yards short? But with the way the NFL is now and how it's geared towards protecting the QBs and the receivers and basically averaging 300 yards a game is pretty much passé. Having a 3,000-yard season is nothing compared to what these QBs are having now. You had 2 QBs, or actually 3 QBs, excuse me, throw for over 5,000 yards. A couple others that were right under it, and then a few others at 4,000 plus. So Drew Brees, back to Drew Brees, is the maestro of that offense. He pretty much is that team. He's going to have to be that team now since Sean Payton is not going to have any communication with that team. Their interim coach, Joe Vitt, is going to be serving his 6-game suspension starting this first week. So really, that offense is not going to look the same, but it's going to have the same personnel, sans Robert Meacham, who went to San Diego for a bigger paycheck. But the Saints do have quite possibly the best tight end right now. Or, like, I mean, between him and Gronkowski, you can go either way. That's Jimmy Graham. This kid's a freak. If you watched him play, you know he is the real deal. You look at guys like him, Gronkowski, Vernon Davis, they are rewriting the game plan, the blueprint on NFL tight ends. These are physical freaks. Cornerbacks are too small to really handle them, and linebackers and safeties are too slow to keep up with them. So Drew Brees has a very, very, very comfortable security blanket in Jimmy Graham. He still has Marcus Colston. He still has Lance Moore. And he is what Peyton Manning was with the Colts, where he can just take any receiver and make them good. But much like Shanahan's running backs, as far as fantasy football goes, drafting a receiver that isn't named Jimmy Graham for the Saints is also a high risk, because you don't know who he's going to be targeting in any game of that season. But the main thing is their running game. They have Mark Ingram. They have Pierre Thomas, Ivory. But their running game doesn't really scare anybody like Drew Brees' arm does. So offensively, they're going to have to basically rely on him like they have been. And they also are without Carl Nix, who went to Tampa Bay. So you have a high-caliber, all-pro, all-world guard that jumped ship, no pun intended, because I've mentioned the Buccaneers, to a rival team in the division. You got to replace him. So they snatched up the Ravens, one of the Ravens' top guards, and Ben Grubbs. So not too much of a loss. But defensively, that team sucked. 24th in the league in defense. And they relied on blitzes when Greg Williams was at the helm. Saints fans loved it when they relied on those blitzes when they got them a Super Bowl ring. But when those blitzes sucked to the point where they lost to the Rams, they lost to the Bucks, and let Alex Smith pretty much revive his career off of them, now it's a problem. So what do? They go get Steve Spagnuolo, who, if you don't know, you must have been following football after the 2007 season, because this is the man who orchestrated the best defense in the NFL in 2007 that knocked off the then undefeated New England Patriots in the biggest game of the year. They're bringing stability to that defense. They're bringing a coordinator who doesn't rely on blitzes. You work within his scheme. He takes your strengths and works with them. You look at what he did with the Giants' front four. That's what the Saints are hoping that he does with their front four, because if you notice, the front four really doesn't get the publicity that the Saints offense does. You really don't hear much about, outside of Jonathan Vilma, what the Saints defense has as far as star power. So, other than guys like Will Smith, if you're not a Saints fan, you're really not going to know many of them who's on that line. And they're going to be without Jonathan Vilma. But they did pick up Curtis Lofton, who was one of the top linebackers for the Atlanta Falcons. They picked him up and brought him into the fold. So he's going to have to play the role of Jonathan Vilma. And he's going to have to be the linebacker that they had in Jonathan Vilma. He can do it, but time will tell. In that secondary, yuck. You saw how you saw how Malcolm Jenkins thoroughly got served up by Vernon Davis in the playoff game against the Niners. You saw how Sam Bradford was able to run down Roman Harper after an interception that should have been a pick six. The Saints secondary is weak. And it was weak if they couldn't get off those blitzes. If they could not execute those blitzes, that secondary was getting exposed like nobody's business. So the secondary, really that whole defense needs to be reworked. So Spagnuolo has his work cut out. But the main thing is seeing how this team in general is going to look without their head coach, without their top defensive player. And the reason why I still have them that high is because, like I said, my rankings are based on how they finished the 2011 season. They still have a chance to still be in that top 10 realm if that offense can still cook like it was. Because, like I said, Drew Brees is an elite quarterback. Drew Brees is a master of that offense. He's a master of dissecting and destroying opposing secondaries. And for him to be my height, 6 feet, and to do what he's doing, that's impressive. That is very impressive. So that offense, it's not like Drew Brees is out. It's not like they're going to have to go through what the Colts did when Peyton Manning was gone for the entire season. They still have Drew Brees. They still have the league's #1 passer. They still have the league's #1 A or B tight end in Jimmy Graham. They still have a very potent offense. It's that defense that's going to have to step it up. It's that defense that's going to have to hold it down for that offense as well. It's that defense that Steve Spagnuolo has been hired to fix, because they've got to deal with the Atlanta Falcons, who have Matt Ryan, who have Julio Jones and Roddy White and Michael Turner and Tony Gonzalez. They have to deal with the Panthers with Killer Cam, Jonathan Stewart, D'Angelo Williams. They still have to deal with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who, if they get those pieces together, they still got to deal with Josh Freeman. They still got to deal with now Vincent Jackson. They still have to deal with Doug Martin. The Saints defense has their work cut out, and I keep saying that. Sorry if this is becoming an ad nauseum phrase, but they really got some problems, because they have to see those 3 teams twice with all that star power on offense. So good luck to them. But that's my analysis of the number 17. I will be back with number 8 soon enough. So in the meantime, go through my site, check out the other posts, check out the other videos, and I'll be back soon enough.